Welcome to Talking Digital Academy, the audio format for the Digital Academy conference organized by Bielefeld University. The Digital Academy is an annual online workshop dedicated to current questions in digital humanities research. This year's theme is Building Workflows in the Digital Humanities. The workshop focuses on how digital research processes are planned, carried out and reflected upon, from the handling of data to the question of how research can remain transparent and reusable over time. Over the course of the workshop, participants explored what it means to build reliable workflows for scholarly practice. They discussed not only technical solutions, but also the methodological choices behind them. How data is prepared, how tools shape research, and how digital projects can be made sustainable beyond their immediate context. For a deeper dive into these questions, the final day of the workshop was organized as an open space day. There, experts from the field shared their perspectives on digital workflows and reflected on their own research practice. These expert interviews form the basis for the 3 podcast episodes on this channel. Our host for this podcast is Silke Schwand, Professor of Digital History at Bielefeld University. Her first guest at today's Open Space Day is Anna Neubert from Bielefeld University.
Welcome to the Open Space Day and welcome to Anna Maria Neubert, who's our first expert of the day. Hello, Anna. It's so great of you to join us today. We are really looking forward to our discussions. I will just maybe introduce you very briefly to the crowd. So Anna Maria Neubert has just finished her PhD at Bielefeld University, very successful, working about the history of digital humanities in Germany, 1990s to 2021, roughly. And her main question was basically, or the title of her dissertation was Towards Mapping the Field. So one of the underlying questions was, what is digital humanities? Who is part of digital humanities? How does digital humanities as a label develop, and what do we actually do when we call ourselves digital humanists? And she collected a big database, designed a dashboard, and is not least because of that project very well suited, I think, to be our first expert of the day. Anna has also already published on project management in the digital humanities, an edited volume that I will warmly recommend to everybody to read this. Anna's background is in musicology, and she has a master in digital humanities from King's College London, and is now a very valued member of the Bielefeld Digital History Group since 2017. And I'm really happy that you're with us today. Welcome again.
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm quite honored and also a bit excited to be on the other side of things. So I organized some digital academies myself, and now I'm really excited to be interviewed as an expert, and yeah, looking forward to the next 90 minutes or so.
Thank you, Anna. So just as an information, again, we will have a short interview, the two of us discussing some of the key questions that we also addressed with the summer school of this year, the Digital Academy itself, and then I will open the floor for questions to everyone. So maybe just to kick off, I did do a short introduction of the things that I remember that you do, but of course I left quite a bit of things out. So maybe you can again tell you something about yourself, and particularly the work that makes you an expert for thinking about workflows.
Yeah, of course. So as Silke already told you, I have a background in digital humanities, but I also hold another master's in arts and culture management, and I try to combine both fields in my work. And in terms of work experience, I have 10 plus years of experience in different digital research projects at various universities, but also in managing and consulting in various research settings. So in my work currently, at the moment, I'm at Bielefeld University working in the Digital History Group. I combine my degree as well as my work experience. So on the one hand, I do research where my interests focus on the theory, history, and methodology of digital humanities, especially through a feminist lens. And on the other hand, I coordinate and manage various research endeavors. So I'm the managing a director of the Center for Uncertainty Studies, but I also coordinate various research proposals, projects, and support the Digital History Group. My interest, as Silke already told you as well, is in project management and managing interdisciplinary teams. So I published there and also edited a volume. And these diverse interests and activities I bring into the various projects and processes and try to contribute different perspectives and to our research methodologies and research workflows we develop. So in this, I'm particularly interested in project organization, communication, and general management approaches in interdisciplinary collaborations.
All right, thank you so much. That was quite a list of things I think that we could also end up talking about. I was really, first of all, of course, sorry for forgetting the degree in culture management. I think this is one of the many perks that you have this big or broad background, not only from building workflows and managing projects from an academic perspective, but also from another field of your work experience. Would you say that it is very different planning academic projects at universities versus other institutions?
Yeah, I think culture, it's not very different, but I think projects in the industry or in where the money flows easier than in academia or culture. But I think culture and academia are quite comparable in that respect. So I think you always have to check your resources, see what are your goals. And I think, yeah, that's quite comparable.
Yeah, thank you. And if we turn to our main subject of today, thinking about workflows, building workflows, what would be your understanding of what a workflow actually is? And can you give us examples of which workflows or maybe kinds of workflows you're particularly familiar with?
So yeah, I can. I think that's a really interesting question, tricky one, because I think we're in an interdisciplinary environment, right? So when a lot of different backgrounds, subjects are combined, so you could always ask what is a workflow, what makes a workflow, and what makes it different to other organization of work. And I think that's what also makes this a great question. I think a great summer school, I hope you all had, because yeah, you have to look and understand what different workflows are there when you work interdisciplinarily. So I myself have been primarily involved in overall project structuring workflows, so focusing on research planning and strategic systematic questioning, like what are the research goals, what do we want to achieve with which resources, so what resources are needed, which expertise is necessary, and when should part projects or parts be deployed. So like, yeah, like I said, it's more for the project management kind of workflow I'm going to focus on here because that's what I've done so far. So I have thus far focused on collaboration, so working together, but also on the organization or the development of technical workflows and the comprehensive documentation thereof. So throughout project life cycles with feedback loops, so planning in feedback loops, evaluating and adjusting the approaches, and evaluating the results that are produced during a project life cycle. So I would say my thoughts are more on a general level here, but I'm really interested in the discussion afterwards, maybe to get to know what you discussed this week and what workflows did you discover or consider as workflows. So I brought two examples for workflows. I want to get into detail into one workflow or a set of workflows that worked really well, and then just elaborate on some thoughts I had, what I think is not going to work in workflows or what are problems with implementing workflows. So the first example, I think what really worked well is when I started here in 2017 was in a project called INF in the Collaborative Research Center. So was a large research center, about 100 people or researchers working there. And we as the team tried, or the idea was to bring DH to a broader audience and attract those people and see if we can support them to carry out some parts of their research digitally. So we did workshops, we talked about methods, and we identified a core group, I think, of 7 people with whom we developed digital methods and implemented corresponding workflows. So we successfully brought together researchers without digital skills to identify their interests and research questions, and then established an appropriate digital support and workflow accordingly. And I think this is well documented, so you can read an edited volume, Digital Methods in the Humanities, edited by Silke. I can paste the link here in the chat, as well as a tool which is called Neubert. That's a result, both results of that workflow, or these workflows. I think what really worked well when we worked in the INF project was that we had clear communication structures. So we had Redmine as a project management platform. We have developed software support systems that provided a clear structure for our accountability, but we also achieved to maintain flexibility to adapt to the changing project. So it was 7-part projects and differing disciplinary requirements. So I think one big part why workflows there worked, that we had systematic preparation and follow-up of meetings, and we combined those with structured communication protocols. So we've written a lot in this project, but it really helped us to carry out the workflow. And we also had workflow evaluation and improvement in combination with the researchers. But there were also key challenges. So, for example, I think when we're in the digital humanities field, you know all about this, establishing common language across different disciplines. So what are the concepts, the theories, the methods? How can we bring them together? And can we see or come to a conclusion that we're following the same goal, or are the goals differing? So I think bridging the gap between various disciplinary approaches and methodologies in this interdisciplinary collaboration worked quite well. But I also worked in projects where this was not the case. So I think workflows fail when the communication fails. I think that's one of my first and foremost consideration. But I think what also makes it difficult to implement successful workflows is when there's no clear common goal. So when it's impossible to determine what elements are needed to be integrated into the workflow for the coordinated progress. And from there on, it's always so it relies on the goals. If you don't have a goal or shared objectives, you work in silos, so you duplicate efforts, you create incompatible outputs at worst. So, and you do research without being integrated into a whole project. So I think the lack of initial goal alignment also means that you can't establish clear roles and responsibilities. And that oftentimes leads, in my experience, to confusion about who is accountable for which part and which deadlines. So communication becomes or can become quite fragmented as different team members assume different project directions. And I think best it is experienced in team meetings when there's not the sense of productivity you normally get, and when there's always a sense of confusion with single members or the team as a whole. And I think investing the time up front to goal clarification, objective clarification, role clarification, and to create a shared project vision is essential. So trying to develop workflows without this foundation is like building on quicksand. And I think that's something, you need to consider.
Okay, thanks. I'm glad that we're recording this because I heard quite a long list of do's and don'ts, like almost a checklist of, going through the different points that you just mentioned. I particularly like workflows fail when the communication fails. I think this should be like a banner that you can hang on your wall for the next project that you're designing. Maybe, and that's not part of our sets of questions, but it got me, like your presentation just got me thinking, would you think that communication, clear goals, clear objectives, roles and responsibilities, is this only a project management perspective, or wouldn't you say that this is also important for, designing a DH workflow where you have to kind of decide, okay, what is my source? What is my tool? where do I want to go? Does that match up, or would you say that there's different questions to be answered in preparing those workflows?
I think these questions align quite nicely. So if your lens is project management or workflow, I think you can combine. I think there's not much different if you look at that holistically. And I hate that word, but I think when thinking about the overall workflows, which I'm talking about here, right? I think building workflows in small bits, it could be different, but the overall workflow, how do you carry out interdisciplinary research? Let's say that's the scope. I think that's these are same questions that align very well with each other.
Yeah, and I think we all have the experience that DH projects are seldomly one-person projects. I mean, oftentimes there's lots of work that one person has to do, but most of the time, you kind of integrate the work of other people, even if you don't cooperate with them directly, but using a tool that somebody else has designed for your particular question kind of gives you the same problem, right? That you kind of have to align what your expectations are and what the tool was designed for, and these kinds of things then still have to be clarified, even in a smaller project setting.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've already started to give us the most important lessons. Do you have anything to add in that regard? So the do's and don'ts.
Yeah, I had made a list with do's. So
Good.
Took me some time to reflect on this question because I think lessons are always a bit tricky, and I wouldn't say I have everything figured out, but even though I think some of the lessons I'm going to mention right now sound a bit boring or mundane, I think are sometimes key components of establishing successful workflows. So trying to make clear that you have the same understanding where you're heading or where you're coming from. So it's important for me to mention beforehand those lessons or the points I'm throwing in here are neither exhaustive nor self-contained. So I'm not saying these are the ones, but yeah, I'm trying to start a list, and I'm excited what the other experts are coming up with. So the lessons come from my own experience and reflections. What I think is needed to sustain stable workflows in the DH praxis when we talk about that. So I have 3 collections of topics, like more general. So the first is interdisciplinarity, or our understanding of interdisciplinarity in general. The second one would be research traditions and documentation of research. And the third is the personal layer of collaboration, which in my experience, or from my point of view, is sometimes neglected in the way we are doing research. So first collection, interdisciplinarity in general. I think one of the first lessons is to embrace the interdisciplinary uncertainty. So always being aware that interdisciplinarity works best, at least in my view, when you accept the uncertainties and ambiguities that come with this. So rather than expecting to understand everything from everyone at 100% at all times, trust your colleagues or your team that they know what they're doing and that they are the experts for their field. I think this mindset is crucial for successful collaborations across disciplines or disciplinary borders, and also in implementing the collaborative workflows that need to work when you want to work interdisciplinarily. The second lesson would be to maintain research flexibility. So always remember that we're still doing research, right? You can plan out as much as you want. It's coming differently than you expected. So even when the goals are formulated or promised for funding, I think that's most of the cases, so much can change over the course of a project, even in a short amount of time, be it technologically, personally, infrastructurally. There are so many components you can consider or where things can go wrong. So building in the flexibility, not only in the project plan, but in your mindset, I think is quite crucial. And accept that there will be deviations. And think about how you will deal with deviations. So third lesson would be to foster transparent knowledge sharing. And I think that's a really crucial point for myself, to avoid the creation of knowledge hierarchies. So even if you don't have the same experience or the same level of knowledge, I think keeping everyone at the same level to understanding as much as possible is crucial, so that there's no secrets. Try to get everyone at the same speed and make flexibility and boundaries part of the common knowledge, so that all team members can access what's discussed, what's aimed at. The second collection I said was traditions, or research traditions. I think that connects quite nicely to the interdisciplinary thought. So establish a common research framework. I think that's underestimated sometimes, to discuss the scholarly and research traditions openly. So what is the experience? So where did you study? What is expected from you? What counts as a valid research result? Where should findings be published, especially when people are doing their PhD? And I think it lines up quite nicely when you think about how computer scientists do a PhD and how historians, at least in Bielefeld, where you need to publish a monograph, it's quite differently and the time span is different. But if it's discussed openly, I think it's easier to adapt to it, or understand at least also the rhythms people working in. So I think these conversations about research traditions can prevent later conflicts about the outcomes and also the impact that's mostly felt personally, right? And I think documenting the goals and processes would be a lesson as well. So creating a formal document that captures the goals, but also captures the different stages and steps of the research process. So even if milestones and all the project management language sounds mundane sometimes, I think they provide essential structure and also accountability. And then the last collection of thoughts or lessons, I think, is the personal layer of collaboration. So build mutual interdependence. So recognizing that team members often depend on each other in unexpected ways is something I think you should plan in for. So making personal understanding and support even more critical to work towards project success and also personal success. So in most of the project, right, everyone has a side project or built-in project that leads to something that's for this person. So be accountable and rely on this interdependence. And last but not least, understanding individual context. So going beyond professional discussion to understand personal backgrounds, I think, is quite important. So you don't need to discuss your innermost feelings with your colleagues, but letting them know about care responsibilities, maybe also something like discrimination experience, and also individual career goals can help to build or form a team that's built on understanding. So understanding what everyone's dealing with or pursuing individual, I think it becomes always easier to hold the project together and support each other across boundaries, be it disciplinary or technological, whatever. So I think you can build better workflows. So I think knowing the team members, knowing research traditions, and figuring out what interdisciplinarity means in the team or for the workflow, can only profit each step of the way.
Thank you. That was not an exhaustive list, but I think very many valid and important and valuable points that you made, especially, documentation, have a common point where everybody can sort of refer back to familiarize themselves again with, okay, what was I supposed to do? And what is the particular role? I think all those things are really important and can also be, again, points that are scalable, right? For like big groups with, 15 people all working on like a collaborative research center, but also having like 2 or 3 people that have a very particular project in mind, and seemingly smaller goal. So thank you for that. If you take all these lessons together, do you have a modular workflow in mind? Can you say, okay, so start with this, and once you have this, then this would be the next step? Or do you know of a modular workflow, or like a tool or a program or or principles that you could give us to sort of then manage and organize all these steps or lessons or important points that you made before?
So I find this question as well a bit tricky.
There's only tricky questions.
There are modular workflows you could follow. And I think if we just have a quick look into project management literature, you kind of find the stages. I think what's crucial, especially when I think about digital humanities research, is where do we need to adapt? And I think, so I identified 6 crucial phases or steps where I think DH projects profit from if they think about this. So I think the first would be, even before the project, I think stakeholder mapping and needs assessment is always quite crucial. So, and study the feasibility. What technologies do you want to use? Which data, which sources are they available? In which way are they available? So define and see if resources are available to determine what's realistically achievable. And also thinking about, that relates to something I said earlier, what are the individual goals? So you have goals as a team or for the project, but there always need to be integrated individual goals, right? For project PIs or also for the team members. So I think that's quite crucial stage. And of course, the project planning phase. I don't know if I need to point out that's something I would say is quite important, but clear articulation of research question or the disciplines involved and the research traditions that come with those disciplines. Then also the expected outcomes that you think are achievable. And I think what lacks in DH research is sometimes the risk assessments or the contingency planning. So what are we going to do if something fails? If the sources are no longer available, if the technology we decided to use is no longer supported, etc. What are you going to do? I think that's quite optimistic planning in the DH there. So I think to plan in for deviances would be would something I would put on the map for this. And then I think one stage that's quite important and also relates back to the things I said about knowing your team or knowing the persons in your team is team formation and management. I think that's quite an important stage also in the planning the workflow phase. So knowing your team members, what are their backgrounds, what is their experience or their expertise, and then doing an onboarding process where you get to know each one. So systematic introductions, not just the team members as on a personal layer, but also to tools and data. and also the project conventions.
Mhm.
And also coming back to communication as well, planning or establishing regular check-ins, one-on-one as a team, but also the documentation standards. How are you going to plan for the project to document the different steps? And something I think that's also quite important is conflict resolution procedures. So what are you going to do if conflicts arise? And I think sometimes it's unavoidable that conflicts will arise. So what are you going to do and how are you going to react? So yeah, that's not the key stages, I would say, but I think some of the points I would just plan in when I'm thinking about the workflows.
Mhm. Thank you. So when we were designing the Digital Academy and thinking about how to build workflows, as I said in the beginning, the Flow project itself focuses on very particular workflows for making historical documents in underrepresented languages accessible through the use of, language model training, automated transcriptions, annotations, and so on. So it's very concrete. And then you gave us some examples now about how we should have maybe designed the Flow team. I think some of the things we do, but maybe some of them we don't do. So thank you for that. If we take this together, one of the things that we found central about thinking about workflows is reproducibility, openness, transparency. So what is your take on how do workflows help us with these kinds of aspects that make, us a scientific community? So, the science what is it? Gute wissenschaftliche Arbeit. Sorry for the German, but proper scientific behavior or workflows. So what is the role of workflows in regards to openness, transparency, reproducibility, and so on? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's quite an important one, but some that's overlooked quite lightly. So I think making workflows accessible and publicly available is something quite crucial. And coming away from only an end result or the research result is something that counts. And I believe strongly that we can learn from others' workflows. So I think having open and transparent workflows helps the community or the research community in general to understand which steps are being taken. And I think there is you need to balance the thing you make available. I'm aware of that. You cannot publish the workflow in your first year, but making these things available for the community is quite important. And I believe we can learn tremendously from each other if we have more insights into those workflows. And so I think what makes a good workflow as well, when we think about collaboration, is making the decisions we make available. So not only the decisions, but also the alternatives we considered. So reasoning processes and modular documentation, I think, are quite big points here. And I think what's one point, and I said that earlier as well, in establishing workflows for me myself is preserving the creative space to come up with different versions. So that's the workflow and how you do it, but you need to have time and space and not pure optimization in your mind to build something. So I think it's crucial that workflows don't come purely about optimization, but generally preserve time and space for exploration and imagination. So I know that these creative ideas or processes are often difficult to map into those workflows, but I think they are essential for research and doing research. So yeah, I know we can talk about, and it's important to talk about workflows, but yeah, planning in for creative space or for the time to explore and imagine things is quite important, I think.
Would you link that to evaluation maybe also? So, just take a step back, look at what you did. Is this still working? Do we need adjustments? I mean, this is not necessarily what everybody imagines when you say creativity, and I go back to a very kind of technical evaluation situation. But I was thinking that maybe this is sort of also linked to each other, to have space to think, but also space to reflect and evaluate the steps that you've taken so far.
Could you point out what you mean exactly? I didn't follow.
Like rethinking, like does the space for creativity also include space for readjusting workflows or steps along the way?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Because sometimes you get ideas on the way, right? You can map out the goals and the milestones as much as you want. But if you do the actual work, I think some questions arise, new questions arise. And I think that's also where the creativity starts to emerge. So where you can discuss, and I think, yeah, that's absolutely what I also mean by that.
Okay, thank you. Time is running, which is always good when you have fun. Time passes along quickly. Maybe I can pose another question and then people can start thinking about their own questions and we will open the floor for discussions. So what we did with the Digital Academy was also invite people to think about their own workflows for their projects. So I'm kind of trying to bridge the more general meta discussion of project management, which is really important. And I think everybody should also think of themselves as I need project management for whatever I'm doing, if I want to be successful in achieving my goals. But what are your experiences? How can digital approaches to research, like digital analyses, quantification in the humanities, visualization, and so on, be also supported by methods of project management? So how would you bridge the gap between what I do daily and what would be sort of the meta perspective of the project management? I know it's another tricky question, but
yeah, it is. So I try to break it down because I think project management can always be helpful, but it's not the thing that makes a project perfect. And I'm not perfectionism, so perfect is not what we're aiming for in research, right? But I think project management can support, but you can, cannot solve fundamental problems. And I said like unclear research goals or incompatible research methodologies. So I think breaking down what you need for digital approaches. So I think there are two sides to this question, right? Or my answer, it has two sides. Then the first is technical side. So what do I need to consider in when I'm thinking about project management or managing a digital research project? And then again, the interpersonal side, which is dear to my heart. That's why I'm always coming back to this, right? So I think integrating digital tools or digital methods in the research project requires always early on assessment of technical requirements and the data availability, as well as the infrastructure to ensure the realistic planning side of things. So what are the timelines? What are the resource allocations? And also the requirements and considerations that need to be addressed up front. So like really technical stuff from server capacity, software licensing, data storage, solutions, compatibility across different institutional systems as well. Like you in the Flow team know probably quite well, if you have different institutions with different technical or infrastructure background. So yeah, I think these are some points for the technical side. For the interpersonal side and managing projects, I think skill development and training is quite important. So bring the team on a level. I think it's also about, like I said, avoiding the hierarchies, knowledge hierarchies. So I think building the team is quite underestimated often. And I think that's also part of the project management. So
Mhm.
you just need time to get to know each other, but also resources to learn new tools, how to deal with data. And I think this learning curve, what you can expect, need to be factored in. So the two sides to it. And again, that's not exhaustive, but yeah, bringing those together is, I think, quite important when we do DH research.
Anna, thank you so much for being here today. That was a really exciting and engaging conversation. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.